What are apostrophes, and why do they confuse even the most grammar-conscious writers among us? Welcome to a special edition of the Grammar Guys, where we explain how to use apostrophes once and for all. In this video, you'll learn how apostrophes are used to show contractions and possession, finally understand to which side of the S these misleading marks of punctuation belong, and be able to explain why using apostrophes to make a singular noun plural is such an affront to the reader's eye. So, let's see if we can make sense of apostrophes, or as I sometimes affectionately refer to them, commas in the air. You know, because they look like the commas in the... that's just not good. Just go to the intro. The primary purpose of using an apostrophe is to show ownership. Like if you had a friend named John and he owned a hat. Using an apostrophe next to an S will show John's possession of the hat. Not the demonic kind of possession, though, more like the benevolent kind, which gives you things, like that hat. Nice hat, John. The confusion surrounding apostrophes occurs when writers have to make a judgment call about which side of the S to place the apostrophe. In most cases, the apostrophe goes in front of the S, but sometimes we see it happen after. How are we supposed to know when to use the apostrophe S and the S apostrophe? Luckily, there's a simple rule we can follow. In all possessive situations, there's a someone or something that owns, and there's the thing that is being owned or possessed. All we have to do is identify what is it that owns this thing, then add an apostrophe and an S. Let's take a look at this rule with both singular and plural nouns. Here's one cat. He's all by himself, so let's give him something. Say, I don't know, a cucumber? Cats like those, right? Now this cucumber belongs to the cat. The owner of the cucumbers are one single cat, and to show this possession, we'll add an apostrophe S. Easy enough. But now here's a plural noun that already ends with the letter S. We have a bunch of cats, so naturally we'll give them a bunch of cucumbers. They really don't seem to like their vegetables, do they? The cucumbers belong to all these cats, and if we keep to our rule, we identify our plural cats as the owners and just add an apostrophe S, right? Well, here's where it's up to you. If you'd like, simply leave the S where it is and call it a day. But if you want to clean up repetitive letters within your words and tighten up your sentences overall, you can leave out the S after the apostrophe. Since the word cat already ends in an S, we can pretend that second S is still there, hanging around like the ghost of a missing letter. But we can safely omit it since the cats that own the cucumbers already end with the same letter. We know the second S is still there, and when we pronounce this word, we will still have to say catses, but it's ultimately up to the writer whether or not to include that final S on paper. So why get rid of the second S in the first place? Suppose you had a friend named Jess, and you gave her some shoes. Nice shoes, Jess. Following our rule, we identify Jess as the new owner of the shoes and add an apostrophe, but it's our choice whether or not to add the final S since Jess already ends in an S. If we do add it, we end up with a whole string of S's. That may seem a little snaky to most readers, which is why that S following the apostrophe is often left out. Whether or not you choose to include the S after the apostrophe on words that already end in an S is entirely up to you. The trick is to keep it consistent. A piece of writing that is not consistent in its use of the apostrophe S after words already ending in S becomes unnecessarily confusing to read and may attract negative reviews. Okay, so what about plural nouns that do not end in S? Suppose there are some toys which belong to some children, or a nest that belongs to some geese. We identify the whole group of children as owning the toys, and the whole group of geese as owning the nest. In both cases, we stick to the rule, adding an apostrophe and then an S to each plural noun. Nothing changes in the nouns themselves, since children alone already means a group of kids, and geese already means more than one goose. With this simple rule of answering the question, who or what is it that owns something, we can turn any noun into its possessive form, including compound nouns like mother-in-law's birthday, time and amounts like the phrase, a moment's hesitation, and even indefinite pronouns such as, it's no one's fault, or it's someone's fault. But we'll talk more about pronouns in another video. Alright, so we've got the rule down for using apostrophes to show ownership, but there's one scenario we haven't discussed. What happens when more than one person owns the thing in question? How do you show possession between multiple parties? Meet Pip and Squeak. They live in the same cage. Sorry, guys. Together, they jointly own this cage, so if we can identify both Pip and Squeak as the owners of the cage, we would say this is Pip and Squeak's cage. Behind their wire bars, however, Pip and Squeak each get their own piece of cheese. Each mouse individually owns his piece of cheese. Pip has his, and Squeak has his, so we would say these are Pip's and Squeak's pieces of cheese, and no one else's. Hey, get out of here! The second most common way apostrophes are used in writing is to contract words or make them shorter and easier to read. Contractions often happen in verbs with not in them, such as the shortening of the word cannot to can't, pronouns next to verbs, such as you have into you, and even common expressions in slang, such as o'clock. In all of these situations, the apostrophe simply replaces the removed letters or numbers in the abbreviated word, so we can think of apostrophes as the stand-ins for whatever is missing. Let's say you were going to throw a 1970s themed party, and you were working on the invitations when this little problem arises. Where do you place the apostrophe when writing out a set time of years? Far too often we see the apostrophe incorrectly placed between the decade and the S. But what does that mean exactly? Do the 70s own something? Is this a contraction of 70 is? In the context of our party invitations, probably not. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is being left out? Or what is missing? In this case, it's the 1900s that is being left out of the written date, so our apostrophe would stand in where the 19 would normally go. If we want to make the number 70 plural, all we have to do is add an S to the end, as we do with thousands of other words. With our invitations looking great and out of the way, we can get back to planning the party. But why do we sometimes see plural words written out with the apostrophe S? With most English nouns, if we want to make a thing plural, we just add an S, right? Have one cucumber and want more? Add an S, and now you have more than one. The only reason we would ever involve an apostrophe in a plural noun is if the noun itself is not a word readers are used to seeing in plural form. An apostrophe before the S lets readers know we are talking about more than one of this thing. You may have heard the common expression dot your I's and cross your T's when someone wants you to do a thorough job on a task. Notice that when written, adding an S after the letter I makes this seem like the sentence says dot your is. Quite confusing if we were reading quickly. Since most readers aren't used to seeing single letters spelled out in plural form, some apostrophes next to the I and the T help distinguish the sentence's meaning of dotting several I's and crossing several T's. Unfortunately, many people have taken this rule to its extreme and now use apostrophes to pluralize any and every word they can get their arms on.
Stop it, please, I beg you! It's a sin! It's a sin! It's a sin!
Yeah, please make it stop. Hey, thanks for watching, and if you found this video helpful, be sure to share it with your local apostrophe challenge eatery, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more properly punctuated video lessons from the Grammar Guys.